What's up, Penn Staters? Thanks for tuning into the Football Letter podcast. This week, we welcome volunteer leader Heather Maggi. Heather is a 2013 Penn State graduate who serves as the president of our Los Angeles chapter. She works in Hollywood as an assistant editor at Sony Pictures Television for Netflix. Heather leads one of our largest alumni chapters, and she now lives in Big Ten country with USC and UCLA joining the conference. This is going to be fun to talk with Heather. She's been featured in the Penn Stater magazine before, and her chapter is doing a lot of great things during football season and year round. Heather, let's bring you into the podcast. How are you doing today? We appreciate you joining the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this will be fun. So we were talking with Heather a little bit before we started recording. Heather, you grew up in Pennsylvania. Given that proximity to Penn State, how did you become a Nittany Lion?
That's right. I'm about 2.5 hours north of Penn State, and my dad was a Penn Stater, and my aunt was a Penn Stater. My cousin was a Penn Stater, which weirdly kind of made me want to seek something else and try and break out of that mold a little bit. My brother was also playing soccer at Penn State Altoona. He's a year ahead of me. And it was when I was touring Pitt's campus and I started having like stressful reactions, like, oh my gosh, this isn't Penn State. What am I doing here? That I realized, oh, maybe I should be going to Penn State.
That's funny. We've heard that before from volunteers from Penn Staters. You know, they've got a whole family full of Penn Staters, and there's that kind of, I don't want to say a rebellion stage, but you're kind of thinking like, what else is out there? But yeah, glad to hear that you ended up a Nittany Lion as well. How did your student experience, as a student, what were the things that you were involved in that made it such a great experience for you as a Penn State student?
My freshman year, I dove into everything. I went to that involvement fair and signed my name on like everyone's listserv, and I overindulged myself a bit. But by sophomore year, I really honed in on two organizations: the Student Programming Association, which is the one that plans kind of all the on-campus concerts and speakers and comedians and events and things that happen, and then the community service sorority, Omega Phi Alpha, were my two ones that I really enjoyed and put most of my time into.
So what was it about your student experience that once you graduated that you wanted to keep that Penn State connection going?
I really loved it. Both organizations gave me such a family feeling, and I felt like it made the whole kind of giant campus feel a lot smaller, and I just grew really attached to it. And just I grew into roles of leadership in both organizations and liked giving back to Penn State while I was a student. And when I graduated, I was very sad to leave and move across the country so far away from Penn Staters. And then I came to LA and discovered I'm not very far away from Penn Staters. There is a thriving Alumni Association out here, and I jumped right in. It took me a good 3 or 5 years to make friends that weren't Penn State alum. Everyone I was hanging out with was Penn Staters because there was just so many. And that was such a good network for me to have once I moved across the country that I wanted to give back.
So I understand that you landed your first job in Hollywood thanks to a fellow Penn State grad. I'm wondering if you want to share that story for our audience.
Yes. So I graduated in May of 2013 and then had a lease that was through the summer. I wasn't ready to leave. So I stayed in State College this summer and moved out to LA during football season. And the Alumni Association has watch parties for the football games. So I went to one of those and met a guy that was working as an assistant editor on a television show for FX. And they had just let their post-production assistant go and were like scrambling to find a new one. And I was like, well, I want to work in post-production. I want to be an editor. And he's like, perfect, come in on Monday. And I did. And at 10 a.m. I was interviewing, and by noon I was taking lunch orders. So worked out really well.
That's exciting. You moved to LA, moved to Hollywood, meet somebody, meet a Penn State grad. So we'll add that to the list of Penn State connections. What was it about working in that field, wanting to be an editor? How did that become something that you were passionate about, that you wanted to pursue as a career?
I was kind of lucky that I had experiences in high school that really kind of led me into editing, because I come from a small town and we have a small high school. It's kind of wild that we even had those kinds of classes, but we did, and I got to do a lot of like little editing, smaller projects, and went to Penn State as a comm major, kind of deciding if I wanted to do news or film, and I realized I don't really like working in the news. It's kind of boring. Not really. There's crazy things happening, but I just found the film major was more interesting to me than the broadcaster, and I'm happy that I went that way. Rod and Maura, the two people that kind of run the film program, were so great, and such a they built such a good like atmosphere and network there, and kind of a cultivating a good little team of creative people, and so I was excited to be able to kind of strengthen my editing skills. My class was a bit of a guinea pig class because were just restructuring the major, so you could kind of hone in on one field a bit more, and so I was able to take more classes in editing as opposed to lighting, which I was not good at.
Yeah, Heather's talking about the resources at Penn State. She mentioned Rod Bingaman and Maura Shea. They're a husband-wife team in the Belisario College of Communications. I believe the last I checked, their production company was called Ma and Pa Production Pictures,
Yes.
but they do local films, and so yeah, just wanted to give Rod and Maura a shout out. Heather, that was they're famous in State College in that they've produced and shot local films and had premieres at the State Theater, and so thanks for giving them a shout out, Heather. I was glad to hear that you connected with them in college.
They've had premieres out in LA too, which has been always exciting when we get Penn State Filmies together when they come out and go see their movie.
When was the last premiere that you had that you attended for them out there?
Gosh, I think they were out here last fall, maybe was the last one, or last winter sometimes. I don't think they've been out here yet this year, but
yeah, but just great Penn Staters. You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are talking with 2013 Penn State grad Heather Maggi. Heather is the president of our Los Angeles chapter. And Heather, from what I understand, before you were the president, you hosted some watch parties, and that was how you sort of maybe learned more about the chapter and what all was involved. Just wondering, how did you initially get involved with the LA chapter?
Yeah, I initially was helping with the website, and kind of the president would give me and another girl some information, events that were going to happen, and new photos, and we would update the website. And then the guy that was running the watch bar in our Hollywood location was trying to take a step back. He was having a baby, getting married, and couldn't commit to every 9 a.m. game on a Saturday throughout the season anymore. And so I stepped into that role. And it was just over COVID that our vice president moved away, and so I reached out to our president, and I said like, oh, I'm interested in kind of like stepping more into a more responsible role, or would be interested in becoming your vice president. And he said, well, how about president? Because I'm also moving. So it was a real quick jump up, but I've got a very supportive board that has been a great help.
Well, that's good to hear, and it's great to hear that you answered the call, Heather. I guess it was one of those things, if you're ready to be vice president, then that also made you ready to be president. So just wanted to acknowledge that, sometimes the leadership evolution happens quicker than maybe some volunteers would expect.
Definitely. And it's been a lot of like kind of learning on the go, but it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, speaking of fun and the watch parties, and I believe that you have several locations for watch parties in LA. What is game day like in LA when you're hosting a chapter watch party? How do you bring the Penn State spirit to those parties and make everyone feel welcome and maybe provide some energy too?
Yeah, we have 4 different watch locations because LA is such a big city, and we understand people don't always want to travel too far from their neighborhood. So in an effort to reach the most amount of alumni, we spread out a bit, and we have one in the Valley, one in kind of the central LA area, one on the west side in Santa Monica, and then one down in South Bay in Torrance. And we get a box of goodies from the Alumni Association. They mail it out, and then I divide it up into 4 kind of little packages and hand them off to our football leads. And they've got like shakers and magnets and pens and these like great like "We are Penn State" on the signs that like open and close, and they've sent footballs, and they've sent us posters, and so it's just kind of a nice fun grouping of things that they'll include, and it's always kind of a surprise of what they're going to give us. And then we've got a bunch of flags, and we've got cowbells, and we each bar kind of has its own different kind of vibe, I guess, too. Our Santa Monica one definitely tends to skew a little younger, and so they'll have Flip Cup at halftime, and they're doing trivia, and then and our Studio City Valley location also likes to do trivia as well, just like random Penn State facts, and we'll do free giveaways, and we'll have I have a lion onesie that I like to break out at Halloween and head to the bar as the Nittany Lion and just try and keep that spirit alive.
Football, Penn State was in the Rose Bowl, as you well know, a couple years ago to cap the 22 season. That was a busy weekend and a couple days for you, Heather. Wondering, how did you capitalize on that opportunity with Penn Staters being in town, the events that you had, and just sort of how were you welcoming Penn Staters to the Rose Bowl a couple years ago?
Yeah, it was so exciting to have them out here. Little did we know they would be out here every other year soon, or every year. And so we had a welcome party on Friday night, just to kind of greet everyone coming into town. During the day, we had watch parties for the other playoff games at a brewery in North Hollywood that is owned and by Penn State alumni, and their head brewer is a Penn State alum. And so we had a big party there throughout the day. And then that evening we had the welcome party. And then we helped out with the Penn State Alumni Association and their pep rally. And then we had kind of like a tailgate that at the UCLA stadium that we were having for the local chapter, but then we had a lot of other visitors come in too, and it was a great time. It was a lot of fun. Big variety of people.
Well, to that last thing you mentioned, when you have the variety of people and you have that many Penn Staters there at the Rose Bowl, how much did you take that as an opportunity just to let folks know more about the LA chapter, if they wanted to get involved, if they were back? And that even goes for the watch parties too. As the chapter president, how do you use those opportunities to maybe promote the chapter in general and what you're doing year round?
Yes, we're always asking people, any new faces we see, we try and find out, how did you hear about this watch party? And a lot of the times they're already following us on social media, which is great. And sometimes they just Googled Penn State bar near me and found us. And so then we have them sign up for our newsletter, and I'll send out a newsletter each month, just like the events and things that we've got going on and coming up. And then we talk just about like what they're doing and what brought them out here, and if they're interested in getting involved more, or just looking for things to do, because we try and host at least one event a month to bring people together.
And there's more than 1,200 Penn Staters on the chapter email list, so there's a lot going on in LA. You're connecting a lot of Penn Staters. Let me ask you, Heather, what was your initial reaction to learning that USC and UCLA had joined the Big Ten?
My initial reaction was, what is this going to do to the Big Ten bar crawl? We there's a Big Ten Alumni Association kind of group out here, and they coordinate a big bar crawl for the championship game, and each school has a bar down in Hermosa. There's a bunch all together, and it's already a pretty packed environment. And this is with people coming from out of like from schools that are across the country. And now you get people that are local to the area. And there's so many more alumni. But then it was the realization that, like, well, that aside, that many new alumni around us aside, it'll be an opportunity to have kind of the actual Penn State out here all the time. And that's one of the best things about the Rose Bowl is I remember going off to the Santa Monica Pier, and it was kind of drizzly and rainy, which does happen in LA. I know people don't always believe it, but sometimes it does rain in the winter here. And so it was a time when like no one would normally be out and about on the Santa Monica Pier, but it was covered in Penn Staters that were in town for the game and they wanted to see the sights, like drizzle be damned. And oh, sorry, am I allowed? I don't, sorry. And so it was just so exciting. It was like, felt like I was back in Happy Valley and with all these people around. And so I'm very excited to kind of have that major Penn State atmosphere coming out here more often. It's going to make it feel like we're not so from home and really almost make LA feel a bit smaller, like kind of like Penn State's campus did.
Yeah, absolutely. We are talking with Heather here in the middle of September. In about a month, we're going to be heading out to LA for, of course, the game at USC. We've got a fan trip organized. Heather, what do you have planned for that weekend when Penn State comes out to play USC? How is the chapter gearing up for that? And what's the vibe out there now as you know, Penn State's coming out as a conference opponent?
Yes. So we will be teaming up again with the Penn State Alumni Association. They, as part of that travel package, have a welcome party and at Tom's Watch Bar that will be $60, and it is pass apps and beer and wine for 2 or 3 hours. I can't quite exactly remember. And it's 2 hours. I think it goes from 7 to 9. And then if that sells out, then we are also be hosting a free like after party at 9 that'll be pay your own way. But still just kind of like we can join the fun and everyone will still be there from the main event. And so we're excited to bring as many people as we can down to Tom's Watch Bar in downtown LA. And then they're having the Roar Tour pep rally on that Saturday morning presumably morning. We don't know what time the kickoff is going to be, but 3 hours ahead of kickoff, which we'll probably end up playing it in the morning. But for those that kind of want to see sites a little bit, our Santa Monica Watch Bar, they're going to have kind of like a morning party and then a bus kind of around LA a little bit and then drops off at the stadium.
So a lot going on. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see on the ticker on the bottom. If you go to our game day page, our alumni.psu.edu/game day, that's where you can find all the information. Letterman Adam Talaferro is going to be out in LA, Heather, so you'll see him. He'll be with us on the fan tour. Just a lot of exciting things going on. As Heather mentioned, Tom's Watch Bar, it's within walking distance of the JW Marriott. That's where we were when we were at the Rose Bowl a couple years ago. Really great place. It's within walking distance of just about anything that you would want to do. Just a lot of fun things planned. And so we'll just reset here for a second. You're tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are talking with Heather Maggi. So Heather, just to kind of continue this theme of football, Happy Valley United visited your chapter, I believe, a little bit ago. James Franklin visited with the team. Just wondering if maybe you want to share a little bit about what you learned during that visit with the football team and Happy Valley United and how the chapter is getting involved in NIL.
Yeah, so we kind of like learned a lot about the different opportunities outside of just like monetary things. There was a great story about how a dentist helped one of the football players with his teeth, and he had always been the kind of guy that would cover his mouth, and then he was smiling huge when he was able to get his teeth fixed. So it's different. It's like different things like that we have been kind of talking as a board, and how can we with our resources here, what can we offer and what can we help with to kind of keep this NIL building, because we want to be able to keep Penn State a viable team and attracting the best kind of players and being able to compete with the other schools and what the kind of boosters that they're able to provide.
So just shifting gears a little bit here, you also hosted your student send-off event in early August. I believe you partnered with the Ohio State LA chapter. Just wondering, what is the send-off event? How much does that unite Penn Staters in that area in terms of, maybe sharing some advice and guidance, and also just kind of maybe helping the students prepare for the upcoming semester?
Yeah, I love our student send-off events because it's so fun to meet new excited Penn Staters and talk to their parents and kind of assuage some worries that they might have. And so it is open to our alumni and to our new students. And we like to have a nice mix so that people can give advice and get advice and also just meet each other. And so this year, in an effort to kind of like draw out as many people as possible, we teamed up with Ohio State as well and had a picnic in the park, a morning picnic with some pastries and coffee, and we had an egg spoon race. And what was really great is that when we broke up into teams of 5 for that race, we had one team that was all new students heading into Penn State. They had like met and connected and became a team for that little relay. And yeah, they were a lot of people exchanging numbers and giving them a little kind of connection of people to know as they enter into campus across the country. And so it's a nice opportunity to kind of remind these people that they are joining a big alumni association and a big support system by going to Penn State, and that even for their parents, like if they are missing their kids, they can come hang out with us and feel close to Penn State.
No, that's well said. I know the parents, especially when the kids go off to Penn State, they feel a little lonely. So it's nice for them to still have a support system there in the area. And you mentioned a couple things, Heather, the big Alumni Association, the big network. We have a lot of alumni, many of whom are involved in chapters or otherwise volunteering. What's your advice maybe for a Penn Stater who wants to get involved, but maybe just hasn't taken that first step yet? What would be, 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would have for them about, how they can get started and what the benefits are?
I think the easiest thing to do is just showing up at an event and seeking out your alumni chapter in your area and seeing what they've got going on, connecting with them on social media or through their website, through emails, and heading to an event that they're having. They're usually very like kind of low stakes, casual, and people will just be so excited that you came. And from there, you can kind of feel out what is needed in the chapter. And maybe if like they don't need something right away, then you can just kind of like let it be known that you're interested. And then as things progress, people will move on into other stuff and then positions will open up. But from my experience going to the alumni leadership conference a couple summers ago and talking to other chapter presidents, I have learned all chapters are always looking for people. So we will happily take any kind of commitment you want to offer. And it's definitely worth it. I think it gives such a solid foundation to, even if you are like, maybe you haven't left Pennsylvania and you're still in like Pittsburgh or Philly. And so you are in a familiar area. It's still kind of like, can be nice to have that like base of people that you can go to. And Penn State has really been that for me.
Well, that's great to hear, Heather, and we appreciate you sharing that advice. We're going to give you a chance to brag about yourself a little bit here. And so assistant editor, I think people hear editor, they think they kind of know what that means. But, especially at Netflix, I would imagine that there's any number of things that an editor does in different phases. One, just wondering maybe if you can go into a little bit more detail about, as an assistant editor, what are the types of things that you're focusing on?
Yeah, so we are making all the kind of picture choices. Once they shoot something, they'll give it to us. And then I'm going through and organizing everything. And the editor is like putting the scenes together, and I'm helping out with cut choices, and then once it's like built out, then I'm building out that sound design and working on any like kind of temp VFX, and before we hand them off to a VFX editor and a sound editor to really like fine tune and finish things out. But we are trying to make that episode or movie look as best as it can to get locked, so then it can be worked on to improve like working on the color and making that look all nice and making the music and stuff. So we're the first line of defense, kind of piecing the puzzle together to get you what you watch on television or in the theater.
What are one or two projects that you've worked on that, you're especially proud of?
I started on Orange is the New Black, and I was on that show for 3 seasons. And I really, actually, no, I guess it was 4 seasons by the end of it. And that was the longest I've ever since then. It's kind of been like 1 season projects, as things just don't last and run as long. I will maybe do 1 or 2. And so to be on something that went for 7, and I got to do 4 of them, which was very exciting. And it was like nice to be with the same people kind of for 4 years essentially, because you don't always get to work with the same people. A lot of the times you're working with new teams always, and so that was a lot of fun. And I worked on 2 shows for Apple TV called Roar and Little America. Both are really great anthology series that have had some really great casts, and so it's been fun to work kind of on a diversity of projects, with comedies and with dramas, and then with also just like different scaling actors. Like I've been on Roar, I was able to work with Nicole Kidman and Merritt Weaver, and Little America, it's a lot more kind of unknown actors that are coming up and just still very talented, and so it's been a lot of fun.
So for the creative process, when you're looking at something on your screen or maybe even in your phone, and then you see it after the fact or after it's been released to the general public and audiences are seeing that, what is that feeling for you, knowing that, I saw it here, I was part of the process, and now we're sort of releasing this out to everyone? What does that feel like as a creative?
It's very exciting to see something up on streaming that I've worked on, or to be able to like watch my name go by in the credits. One of the most powerful moments I've had with that, I worked on this short film called Red, White, and Blue that was nominated for an Oscar this past year. And so I got to go to a showcase of all the nominated short films. And so people were watching them, and I was at in this theater, and mine comes up and we're watching it. And there's this moment that no matter how many times I watched this short film, there's this moment at the end that would bring me to tears. And I've probably seen it well over 100, and still like my eyes would water up. And then hearing like the sniffles and the gasps and kind of everyone having that reaction that I was still having myself in the theater, even after watching it so many times, and just being able to work on something that affects people in that way was very special.
Well, we just wanted to take a moment and say congratulations, Heather, and we are big fans of you. We've tried to get Heather on the podcast before, and so we were glad to get her on this year. We kept on trying. We're like, you know what, we're just gonna. This was a get for us, Heather, to kind of use the Hollywood terminology, and so we'll wrap up here just by sort of asking you this. When you look at kind of the Penn State network being part of the Penn State family. Just what's the best part of being a Penn Stater for you?
Just the excitement that people have for Penn State, and that carries kind of over into other areas of life, and then just that like kind of excited energy that people bring to it. That's what I really like about being a Penn Stater and being around other Penn Staters, is just that kind of central camaraderie that you can build out from there.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, Heather. Again, Heather Maggi, 2013 Penn State grad, president of our Los Angeles chapter. She might even become maybe our borderline football letter correspondent when we come out to play USC and UCLA, and we'll get the vibe and the scene from her and kind of what's going on there in Hollywood as we'll be coming out, maybe not every year, but hopefully every other year. And so, Heather, we'll be talking with you more often, and just wishing you all the best and appreciate you stopping by the podcast today. Thanks, Heather.
Great, of course. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Heather Maggi, everyone.
Students, alumni, family, and friends, please welcome the Pennsylvania State University